Hello everybody! So here is Black Angel again, and I'm here with a video about ESTJs. I was still deciding if I want to do ESTJ or ISTJ, but I think I will do ESTJ on this one. And I want to talk about this type because I have flu and I think it's the best moment to discuss this type specifically. But yeah, no, it's actually that I have a couple of ideas in mind about ISTJs and ESTJs. So ESTJ's dominant function is extroverted thinking. So extroverted thinking as a dominant function means that these people are mostly based on public opinion and on what public opinion and public consensus considers the most knowledgeable and the leading sources of information. Here we're not meaning that ESTJs only listen to Cosmopolitan, but rather that they only consider valid those sources that are considered valid by the majority. So when we're talking about medicine, for example, you know that there's some disciplines that are not accepted by general medicine and by doctors and hospitals, and there's other things instead that are accepted. So these things that are labeled as pseudoscience are these things that an ESTJ would not rely on because they're not approved by public consensus. So being based on public opinion also means that for these people, having a facade and a name out there is extremely important. Now, the first thing that comes to mind is actually an ESFP's name, an ESFP's phrase, which is Napoleon. Napoleon used to say, "Good or bad until they talk about it." And that's typical of extroverted thinking in the third position. So when extroverted thinking is the core of a person's self-esteem, the person thinks in these terms: until there is public opinion talking about me, it doesn't matter if they talk good or they talk bad. So for an ESTJ, it's not a matter of their self-esteem, but it's rather a matter of existence. If nobody talks about me, then I do not exist. This is an ESTJ's principle. And what they mean with that is here and now. If an ENTJ thinks if I don't do anything for people to talk about me in the future, then an ESTJ instead is the type that wants people to talk about them here and now, and the more positive, the better. Here I have an example of an ESTJ cook that is very famous in Italy, whose name is Igles Corelli, pronounced in Italian. And this guy is an ESTJ, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. And this guy has this tendency to scold his audience so that they're not present enough, and to ask for the audience's opinion and for the audience's positive regard. That's something that he does a lot, and that's very important to him. Another thing that extroverted thinking in the first position, in the dominant position, means in ESTJs specifically, is that they are very able of organizing their work and everybody else's work here and now. So they're not good at planning over time, but they're good at organizing things on the spot. They make for great executives, for example, not for high positions, but rather executives. Higher positions are normally achieved by ESTPs and ESFPs, anyway, types that have more extroverted sensing. An ESTJ is not about power. And they're not into power games. They kill and destroy anything power game related. And I think I will give an example later on, but if I forget, just ask me in the comment section and I will tell you. Anyway, yeah. First position, public opinion, public consensus, approved sources that are approved by public consensus and by general consensus, and the ability to organize anybody's work here and now. And this is where an INFP gets a lot of help from an ESTJ, because the INFP tends to have a lot of difficulties organizing their own work, and they're looking for someone helping them organizing their work. Which is also where they are the conflictor instead, or conflicting with INFJs, because INFJs are more inclined to make use of their time the way they want. And this is a topic that we will touch again later on. Second function of an ESTJ is introverted sensing, so body sensation, personal body sensation. And when we're talking about personal body sensations, we are in the realm of perception, so a person's perception of whatever sensory experience there is out there, or they are living. They actually live their lives on these physical experiences. So they tend to be quite hedonistic type. All introverted sensing types tend to be quite hedonistic because they value a lot the pleasure of the senses. We're not talking about sex specifically, but we're talking about good food, good tables, good wine, good company, and all that kind of stuff. So they enjoy being around the table and having good food in front of them and tasting all these special foods and stuff. I can see them being the number one gourmet type, so the gourmet kind of person. Not only because it's extremely popular and therefore it's a must for an extrovert thinking dominant, but also because all of these clashing tastes and all of these nuances that are applied in gourmet cuisine are something that for an ESTJ will be extremely attractive. Not all the time, just a little bit anyway. An ISTJ is probably more inclined, an ISTJ and an ISFJ are probably more inclined to enjoy this kind of sensation a lot more than an ESTJ, but even in an ESTJ, it is still there. They also pay a lot of attention, extreme attention, to their health from their perspective and from their point of view. So they're not going to rely on what others tell them, but they're going to define themselves what their health is. This is something very strange that I noticed about introverted sensing types. All of them have a tendency to shun and not to like doctors and being having to do surgery or all that kind of stuff. They only go there if it is extremely necessary. And I had to figure out, obviously by talking to them, reading the theory and understanding things a little more in depth, that it is connected to their physical experience. If you think about it, surgery is an extremely big physical impact that is going to change the body. So experiencing something so radical for an introverted sensor is extremely painful psychologically. So they're not very prone into going to the doctor a lot, or but they tend to be also very inclined to hypochondria. And not literally, don't take that literally, but yeah, they tend to sound hypochondriac, and that's something that I noticed about them a lot. That's something actually that I think I need to point out, and this is a specific of ESTJs. An ESFJ uses introverted sensing auxiliary to amuse others, to give others a good time. If you think of Alyson Hannigan, she is the prototype of an ESFJ, and she is amusement made person. That's typical of an ESFJ to use amusement to make other people's lives better. What does an ESTJ instead do with their introverted sensing? They display a negative physical state so that others are going to take care of them instead of worrying about their own health. This is extremely important in duality matters because an INFP, INFPs are the ESTJ's duals. An INFP has their self-esteem revolving about their own health and their understanding of other people's health conditions. So for an INFP, it is paramount to have good health and understand other people's health the best possible way. So taking care of someone that is not actually feeling that bad, so that is possible to heal, and healing them and taking care of them all the time because they're feeling so bad while they instead are feeling better, compensates to their lack of self-esteem and gives them, I find this thing really, really interesting and amusing at the same time. I don't know why. Anyway, this compensates their self-esteem and it grants them not to think too much about their own health, having a sense of being healthy because they're more healthy than this other person they're taking care of. And at the same time, they also have a feeling to be kind of like an introverted sensing dominant because they can see that the other person is feeling sick and they need help. So yeah, this is something to notice about introverted sensing auxiliary. I have a lot of ESTJs around me, to be honest, so I started spotting them and I realized that all these things that I read are very true about all these people. All of them displayed in a different way, so it's not like every person displays it the same way. For example, my aunt, my father's sister, she tends to be extremely dramatic about her health, the way an ESTJ can be. So she talks a lot about it, she explains a lot of facts. She tells a lot of facts that display that she's really, really feeling like shit. That it is true or that it is a little bit exaggerated. But anyway, she does that a lot. Whereas another guy that I know, an ex-boyfriend of mine, that is anyway the son of a family friend, he tends to point on one of his real health issues that is instead bearable and acceptable, and he makes it like a life-hindering condition that prevents him from living normally. So as you can see, it's very different. So one person exaggerates things and increases the number of symptoms, whereas the other exaggerates one single thing exponentially, as if it were life-threatening or something. Anyway, yeah, this is just to give you two examples, but there's plenty of examples out there of this kind of behavior. Extroverted intuition in the third position means that the self-esteem of these people revolves around recognizing opportunities. This is what extroverted intuition is about. Recognizing opportunities. Opportunities are a fan of things that can happen to you in front of you. And catching the right train means to have a specific attention towards the possibility that are offered to you. And for an ESTJs, it is extremely important for their self-esteem to understand and to always catch the right train. So to always be on the right train and to show that they're successful in that sense. We're not talking about success in extra sensing terms. So it's not about power. But for example, an ESTJ that likes cuisine, they can consider themselves extremely successful because they got the chance to work in a restaurant that they considered the best restaurant in their area since they were children. Just to give you one example. Another thing that extroverted intuition in the third position does, so the not, as I say, not, of self-esteem, is that these types, both ESFJs and ESTJs, do not enjoy conflict at all. INFJs are also kind of conflict avoidant. They're more conflict sedating. So they stop conflict. They have a calming effect on conflict. They balance extroverted sensing. Whereas these types here, which are the extroverted intuition tertiary, tend to have an extremely negative attitude towards power games, conflict of any kind, and strength, displays of strength, and at the same time an extreme need for external harmony. So conflict disrupts external harmony, and for ESTJs, external harmony is paramount. So that's another thing to consider. Introverted feeling inferior. This is the most amusing trait of this type, to be honest, and it's extremely amusing because for an introverted feeling inferior, well, I will be extremely straightforward about it. They are suggestible by love. This is how it's written in socionics. What does it mean? It means that if they are in love with person A and person A hates person B, they're going to hate person B with a passion. If person A instead loves person C, they're going to love person C as if they were their brothers. So that's how they work. Another thing that it means is that if their partner, the person that they love, has a negative opinion, considers something wrong, like for example, if this person considers immigration wrong, the ESTJ is going to consider immigration wrong. If years later they change partner and they fall in love with another person, they will start thinking, and this new person says that immigration is a very important thing and they are all in favor of immigration. The ESTJ is going to completely forget their previous statement and fall into this new one and decide that immigration is absolutely good. So they're not a type prone to coherence, as you can see, because coherence is an introverted intuition matter. So the function that focuses on coherence is introverted intuition. So introverted intuitive dominants are naturally coherent. It depends on what. So yeah, I'm not going to go in depth into this anyway. Whereas an ESTJ and an ESFJ are not going to be coherent types. Not that a lot of people out there have a clear idea of what coherence actually is. I think I will need to open a chapter about this topic, because everybody out there is persuaded that coherence means you cannot change your mind ever. So you're born, you believe that a shoe is actually a shuttle. You have to believe that a shoe is actually a shuttle until you die, because otherwise you're incoherent. That's what people think coherence is. Whereas coherence means that you're going to stick to your principles, and you're going to stick to your views, and you're going to stick to your positions about specific things. So one example about coherence that ESTJs do not have. For an INFJ, it might be a matter of coherence to always respect others. This would be a TI rule that follows, that is molded on an introverted intuition principle. When we're talking about introverted intuition principle, it's all stuff like, I don't do that because it's a principle matter, or I'm gonna do that only because it's a principle matter. That kind of principle there. So it's important to respect others. This would be an INFJ statement. For an ISTJ, that is not the case. So it's not always that way, as I said, because for an ISTJ, it is important to respect people that their partner respects, and it is important to disrespect people that their partner disrespects. So as you can see, for an INFJ, it would be an incoherent behavior, whereas in some way they are following their inner rules that are based on a basic incoherence of principles. So they're not following a principle that says I have to do everything, to believe everything my partner says. It's not like that. They're working on a subconscious thing. So they are subconsciously reacting in a specific way to what their partner believes to be right or to be wrong. And yeah, this is actually extremely interesting. I think I should open a chapter about this one and make another video, because INFJs do something that might sound similar, but it's actually extremely different. An INFJ adapts to what another believes to be right and wrong, but they still keep their inner belief about what is right or what is wrong. So they adapt to others, but they keep their belief. If they have to actually adhere to the others at a deep level, they will need to re-explore their beliefs and figure out why they do not. They should change their mind, and if they end up not agreeing with change their mind, they're not going to. And here we're talking about beliefs about what is right and what is wrong, not other things. Not principles, beliefs of that kind. Whereas an ESTJ changes according to the person they are in love with, and they don't give that any importance whatsoever about coherence or incoherence. Actually, if I can give you a piece of advice, if you want to be a good person inside and you really want to treat others right and respect others, I wouldn't go so far as to pushing an ESTJ because they were incoherent. I mean, if you're an INFJ, it's going to jump out of your mouth without you even thinking. And you can probably not control that. But otherwise, if you are going to deliberately push an ESTJ on this topic, that's really bad taste. You're simply hurting someone deliberately, and that's not acceptable, in my opinion. Anyway, yeah, my cat is arriving and telling me, "Mom, what are you doing?" Anyway, yeah, I'm thinking if I want to say something else, and there was this example I said at the beginning. Yeah, power games. An ESTJ always seeks balance, especially in relationships. They want to be equals with the other in some way. And this equality is very important for an ESTJ. And for example, an ESTP tends to have an extremely domineering attitude in a lot of ways. They are the prototype, the stereotype of the dominant male. Whereas the ESTJ, on the other hand, is the stereotype of the equal rights kind of guy. So we're not talking about social justice warrior, but we're on that line. An ESTJ is very likely to support women's rights. An ESTJ is very likely to support gay rights, whereas an ESTP won't care about that probably, or be fully against it. Anyway, yeah, they tend to support equality, even if they have a partner that considers, if they have a partner. I have an example of an uncle that is married with an ESTJ uncle that is married with this ISFP, and he doesn't always agree with her introverted feeling. And what he does when he when he's all being cannot do that because he's after all a human being. So there is a very small portion of coherence. When he really cannot do that, what he does is shut up. So he doesn't intervene. If he disagrees with her, he doesn't intervene, and they're gonna talk about it in private. And that's because for him, equal rights are very important. And that's because they're contrasting an extroverted sensing attitude that is seeking power games. Extroverted sensing seeks power games. So one matter of conflict between an ESTJ and an INFJ would be, another matter of conflict would be that the INFJ always has this kind of in your face kind of behavior. So they're going to do things subconsciously. They don't do that deliberately, but subconsciously they're going to challenge the other person, to kind of throw the glove of the challenge in some way. So they are extremely controversial individuals. They are unclear in a lot of ways. They say things that can be read in multiple ways, and they do that in such a way that they sound one way, the way they shouldn't sound. And another thing an INFJ would do is to deliberately throw challenges. Which means if the ESTP says, oh, I don't want to do that, then the INFJ is going to come up with something that is going to challenge that belief in some way. Like, for example, I don't want to go out with that group tonight because I don't feel like doing that thing. Oh, you never want to do that thing, so why do you say tonight? That's something that an INFJ can say. But it goes a lot more in depth than that, and I'm not going to take other examples because otherwise we're going out of path. And the ESTJ is going to contrast that. So they're going to be, she or he is going to be against that. So why do you have to be so, what was the word again that my boss used to use? Polemic. That's if you hear an ESTJ say this person is polemic, they're talking about an INFJ. 100% sure. And that's an INFJ's TI trying to explain to the ESTJ why the ESTJ is wrong about their extrovert thinking, and the ESTJ growing anxious and angry because they don't feel respected by the INFJ, and therefore they go like, oh, you're polemic. That's what they do. Anyway, yeah, that's how it works between them. Between an INFJ and an ESTJ. So, yeah, polemic is the word that extroverted thinking dominants like to label introverted thinking types. All of them. The ENTPs, INTPs, ISTJ, oh my god. Again, Alpha Quadra, so INTP, ENTP, ISFJ, and ESFJ, ESTPs, ISTPs, INFJs, and ENFJs, all of them to an ESTP, to an ESTJ are going to be polemic. You're polemic. Anyway, they hear an introvert thinking explanation, especially from an INFJ, they're going to go, oh, you're polemic. So yeah. What we normally do at the end of these videos is what enneagrams are these types normally. I can see them very well being Enneagram 1. Enneagram 6 also, probably Enneagram 9, more likely than an INFP for sure, because they're more seeking external feedback. An INFP does not. So, yeah. They could be an Enneagram 9. Enneagram 8, wing 9 though, not a wing 7. I would never type an ESTJ wing, an Enneagram 8 wing, an Enneagram 8 wing 7. It's like a contradiction. But Enneagram 8 wing 9, it's possible. What else? I think this is pretty much everything. Yeah, 1, 6, 9, and 8 wing 9. These are the most likely types for me, in my opinion, for an ESTJ. Anyway, yeah. With whom do they get along? I was forgetting. Sorry. INFPs, obviously, but not necessarily, because it's very difficult to build their kind of relationships, to be honest. And that's not because one type is more difficult than the other. It's just INFPs are extremely picky, and it's like the guy called Heathcliff. I don't remember I think you guys know better than me what the novel is and who's the author. Anyway, if you think of Heathcliff, that guy there is labeled an ESTJ in a lot of places in socionics, and that's because of his relationship to the woman that lectures him about why he's behaving the wrong way. So it's a very difficult relationship because INFPs are not particularly imposing. ESTJs want balance. So when they get in touch, there is this imbalance at the beginning that tends to push both apart from each other. But once they get to know each other and they get acquainted, the INFP is the type with which the ESTJ can get the best along. Yes, ENFPs, obviously, some ISFP also, with whom they do not get along at all. I would say INFJs. INFJ is probably the only type with whom they cannot really get along at all. Now, to be honest, I haven't heard a lot of people fond of these ESTJs guys. Well, those I know, at least, are not particularly loved individuals, which is sad for them because they actually would need that. Not to be loved, but to have a positive feedback from others, at least, which is not love. Having a positive feedback from others is not love. And it doesn't mean that the person is actually doing something right, also. So, anyway, yeah, they're not particularly appreciated or loved, so they're very lonely individuals. But they're still seeking public consensus about themselves. So yeah, it's quite a. I think you can get where herophobia, I think that's the new term for that, fear of happiness comes from. I'm talking about all these attitudes out there, never having a joy in life, or life is always bad. Life is a disaster. So this catastrophism, decadentism, and this tendency to always think only black. That's typical of an ESTJ. That's an ESTJ's typical way of thinking. Anyway, yeah, some ENFJs can also be very catastrophistic, but in a very different way. You're going to spot the catastrophistic ENFJ because they're going to make the room explode with anxiety. So, anyway, yeah, I think I will close this here, and I said everything. Sorry if I was a little less organized than usual. It's because I have flu, but I felt like making this video and I wanted to share it. So, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.